They built a water park on my reservoir like I was some background character in my own life. Bright banners, plastic palm trees, the whole fantasy. Then they acted shocked, like truly offended, when I shut the intake valve that feeds their pumps. The day the slides went dry and that lazy river turned into a dusty ditch, that's when Maple Crest finally learned my name. I'm Ethan Cole, and I didn't buy Pine Hollow Reservoir because I wanted attention. I bought it because I wanted quiet 26 acres of trees, a clean shoreline, and water I could manage the same way I managed systems for the state for 20 years, carefully, legally, and with respect for what happens when people get sloppy. Up the hill from my property sat Maple Crest Estates, a brand new neighborhood with identical mailboxes and a homeowners association that treated the word community like a weapon. I wasn't part of their HOA, I never signed anything, never paid a dime, never attended a meeting. But they looked at my reservoir the way a kid looks at someone else's birthday cake. The first sign something was wrong was a convoy of work trucks rolling down my gravel drive one Tuesday morning, kicking up dust like they owned the place. I stepped out in boots and a flannel held up a hand and watched a foreman slow down like I was an annoying speed bump. "Morning," I said, keeping my tone calm. "You're on private property." He glanced at a clipboard and shrugged. "We've got a utility easement, sir. We're here to prep the site." I laughed once, not because it was funny, but because it was insane. "No, you don't. Turn around." He didn't argue much, just backed the trucks out like someone told him the wrong address. But the way he looked at me said this wasn't over. That night, I emailed the HOA contact address I found online, attached a copy of my property lines, and wrote one simple sentence: "Do not enter my land again." I got nothing back, not even an automated reply. Just silence like they could ignore reality until it got bored and left. 2 days later, orange survey stakes popped up near my fence line, except they weren't near my fence line, they were past it. I walked out, measured, took photos, and then I heard the buzz. A drone circling low over my valve house like it was filming a documentary called "This Guy Is Our Problem." That's when I saw her. Brenda Whitman, president of the Maple Crest Homeowners Association, standing at the edge of my field in crisp white sneakers that had never met mud. She had that perfect practice smile, the kind that looks friendly until you realize it never touches the eyes. She didn't wave. She didn't apologize. She just watched me like she was deciding where to place a piece on a board game. That weekend, my neighbor Jake Alvarez drove over with his phone out face tight. You seen this. On the screen was Maple Crest's website like a glossy sales pitch. Maple Crest Community Water Park opening summer 2026. There were renderings of water slides, a splash pad, and a lazy river looping around my reservoir. Right there under a photo of Brenda shaking hands with some developer she'd written. "We're restoring a shared community resource for the enjoyment of all." Shared, community, resource. I stared at that word shared until my jaw hurt from clenching, because what she meant was simple: if we want it, it becomes ours. The next morning they came back, but not with trucks they could pretend were a misunderstanding. They came with fencing and banners, and they set it up like a festival right through my grass. 50 feet into my property, they hammered posts and strung orange mesh, then slapped up a sign, "Future Home of Maple Crest Water Park." I walked straight up, boots sinking into soft ground, and tore the sign down with my bare hands. Brenda appeared like she'd been waiting for that moment, stepping closer with 2 board members behind her like backup dancers. "Ethan," she said, like we were old friends, "you're really going to be the one man who stands in the way of something good for families." I held the sign in front of me and said, "You're trespassing. Remove this today." Her smile tightened. "This project is going forward. Don't make this ugly." I snorted. "Brenda, you made it ugly the second you crossed my fence line." Within days, Maple Crest turned me into a villain in their neighborhood group chats. Someone posted a picture of my shoreline with the caption, "This man is hoarding water." Another post featured kids holding hand-painted signs that said, "Please let us have a water park." It sounds ridiculous, grown adults weaponizing children, but it worked. Cars slowed near my driveway. People stared when I went into town. Once I found a crumpled note on my mailbox that said, "Think of the community." And the worst part, for a few nights, I did. I sat on my porch staring at the reservoir, listening to frogs and wind in the trees, and I felt this heavy, sick doubt settle in my chest. I'd moved here to rest, to disappear. Now I was in a fight with a suburban bureaucracy that had more time than sense. I actually caught myself thinking, maybe I'm being too rigid. Maybe I could just let them have some access. Maybe I'm the problem. Then I pictured Brenda's smile the way she didn't ask, didn't negotiate, didn't even acknowledge my ownership, just took. And something in me snapped back into place like a latch clicking shut. I wasn't being rigid, I was being robbed, politely with balloons. The twist came from inside Maple Crest. Late one evening there was a knock at my door, quick, nervous. I opened it to find Sarah Bennett, a Maple Crest resident I'd seen around standing with her hood up like she was about to hand off classified documents. "I shouldn't be here," she said, voice low, "but this is wrong." She handed me a packet internal HOA emails, meeting notes, and a timeline. The plan wasn't restore anything. It was build first, deal with complaints later. One line made my blood run cold. If Cole resists, public pressure will fold him. They weren't hoping I'd agree. They were counting on me breaking. That same night, Jake texted me a grainy photo from his backyard, a crew digging a trench near the reservoir, running black piping toward the water. "They're tapping it," he wrote. "After dark." I drove down with a flashlight and caught them mid-job. The workers froze like teenagers caught sneaking out. One guy said, "We're just doing what we're told, man." I kept my voice steady. "Who told you?" He hesitated, then nodded toward the hill. "HOA guy. Said it's all approved." Approved by who? Their group chat. The next morning I stopped playing defense. I printed my deed, the recorded property boundaries, my water rights documentation, and every photo and timestamp I'd taken. I drove to the county planning office and slid the folder across the counter like a brick. A woman named Megan Brooks in the Water Commission looked through it, then looked up at me with that expression people get when they realize someone's been lying loudly. "Mr. Cole," she said, "there are no permits on file for any structure, any diversion, any intake. Nothing." I hired a local attorney, Daniel Harper, a guy who spoke like he was always 2 steps ahead. He flipped through my evidence, nodded once, and said, "They're betting you'll get tired. Don't." He had me send a certified notice to the Maple Crest Homeowners Association. Cease and desist, remove all encroachments, stop diversion attempts, and because I'm not reckless, we included a formal 72-hour notice that any unauthorized interference with my water source would result in termination of flow through the intake. Brenda responded the only way a person like Brenda responds, by pretending her confidence was the same thing as legality. She posted a statement to residents, "We are moving forward. Ignore intimidation tactics." Intimidation tactics. I read that line twice and laughed low and bitter because the only intimidation was coming from the people building a theme park on land they didn't own. On the morning the 72 hours expired, the air felt too quiet, like the world was holding its breath. I walked down to the valve house, a small structure tucked near the intake line, the one piece of hardware that controlled the water feeding the pumps they'd installed. I unlocked the door, stepped into the cool, dim space, and rested my hand on the big metal wheel. For a second I just stood there, not because I was scared, but because I knew the moment I turned it, everything would explode. Then I thought about those emails, "Public pressure will fold him." I thought about the fencing on my land, the drone, the lying, the kids used as props. And I turned the valve. Slow at first, a measured rotation, the way you close something you'll never reopen for a liar. The pressure gauge dropped. The vibration in the pipe softened, then faded. The sound of water moving through the line dwindled until it was nothing but silence. I drove back up to my house, made coffee, and waited. It didn't take long. My phone lit up like a Christmas tree, texts from unknown numbers, missed calls, voicemails piling up. The pumps are screaming. The slides are shutting down. They're saying it's sabotage. Then Brenda called. I let it ring twice before answering because I wanted her to hear how calm I was. "Ethan," she snapped, voice already cracking at the edges. "What did you do?" "I shut my intake valve," I said. "The one on my property. The one you never had permission to connect to." "You can't just—" She started like she was talking to a misbehaving employee. "You're harming the community. You're—" No, I cut in and my voice went cold. "You built a water park on stolen water. You harmed yourself." She hissed, "We will sue you into the ground." I almost admired the commitment. Almost. "Brenda," I said, "please do. I'd love to watch you explain trespassing to a judge." 3 days later, I got the paperwork, Maple Crest Homeowners Association ver Cole. They claimed I disrupted a community utility, caused emotional distress, and threatened neighborhood property values. It was theatrical. It was also stupid. Court day came fast because the county was already sniffing around the unpermitted construction. The courtroom was cold beige and perfectly indifferent to Brenda's drama. Her attorney spoke about community benefit and shared resources like he was reading a brochure. Daniel placed my deed on the table, then handed the judge the permit search results from Megan Brooks' office. Judge Natalie Patel didn't raise her voice once. She didn't need to. "Counsel," she said, looking directly at Brenda's side. "Do you have a recorded easement granting access to Mr. Cole's land?" Silence. "Do you have written consent from Mr. Cole authorizing diversion or use of his reservoir and intake infrastructure?" More silence. Judge Patel's eyes sharpened. "So you built on private property without permission, without permits, and attempted to divert water you did not legally control." Brenda shifted in her chair, lips pinched so tight they went pale. Judge Patel set the papers down like she was finished entertaining nonsense. "Motion denied, and I strongly recommend your association consult counsel regarding potential liability for trespass and unlawful construction." Outside the courthouse, Brenda finally looked small. Not because she felt sorry, but because for the first time she couldn't bully the system into bending for her. Her board members avoided her eyes. Someone from Maple Crest whispered into a phone face tense. Brenda's perfect smile was gone, replaced by a raw, stunned expression, like she couldn't understand why reality wasn't negotiable. I didn't stay to watch it unravel. I drove back to Pine Hollow, parked, and walked down to the water's edge. The reservoir was calm, steady, unchanged, like it had been waiting for people to stop treating it like a prop. And that's the thing. When someone tries to take what's yours with a grin and a slogan, the strongest answer isn't loud, it's firm. Lesson boundaries don't work unless you enforce them.